Shalom, brothers and sisters. Grace, mercy, and peace be unto you from Yahuwah the Father and Yahusha our Mashiach, his voice. Hear, O Yasharal. Yahuwah our mighty one, he is one Yahuwah. This is Brother David coming to you again to bring you Yahudah'S Maccabees, one of the heroes of Yasharal, yet unknown. The Europeans have their heroes. Hercules, Achilles, Zeus. We have our heroes. Moses, the one they call Joshua, Yahusha. What about King David? Then we have our Mashiach, the greatest of all. He came and laid his life down for us. Everyone wants to lay claim to him. But we have some other heroes that are missing to complete this pantheon of great men who fought for the cause. This is one of them. His name is Yahudah'S Maccabees. He fought against the descendants of Achilles, of Heracles, of Zeus. And he beat them so badly, they had to take this out of the Bible. They did not want you to see. One could chase 1,000, and two could put 10,000 to flight. If you are fighting in the name of Yahuwah. Let's begin. First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 1 to 9. We begin with Alexander the Great. Verse 1. This history begins when Alexander the Great, the son of Philip of Macedonia, marched from Macedonia and attacked Darius, king of Persia and Media. Alexander enlarged the Greek Empire by defeating Darius and seizing his throne. Do you see what they call him? The Great. Who is he great to? Is he great to us, brothers and sisters? No. He's in the history books as one of the greatest leaders and military commanders of all time. To who? To the Europeans. Your history doesn't matter in their world. You can only find your history if you seek it out. This is what we're doing now. We're seeking it out. This Alexander the Great came from the north. We already know who he is a descendant of. He came raping, pillaging, robbing, stealing, and murdering. He was a sexual deviant, a homo thug. Yet, he is considered great to the Europeans. Verse 2. He fought many battles, captured fortified cities, and put the kings of the region to death. Verse 3. As he advanced to the ends of the earth, he plundered many nations. And when he had conquered the world, he became proud and arrogant. Verse 4. By building up a strong army, he dominated whole nations and their rulers, and forced every one of them to pay him taxes. When it says that he conquered the world, we're talking about the known world. Do you see what the Europeans consider to be the world? Every place where the children of Shem and the children of Ham, every place that they dwelt. Verse 5 to 7. When Alexander had been emperor for 12 years, he fell ill and realized that he was about to die. He called together his generals, noblemen who had been brought up with him since his early childhood, and he divided his empire, giving a part to each of them. Verse 8. After his death, the generals took control. Verse 9. And each had himself crowned king of his own territory. The descendants of these kings ruled for many generations and brought a great deal of misery on the world. Isn't that what the colonizers do? Every place they go, they say that they're bringing civilization, yet they bring chaos, rape, and death. Let's look at one of the descendants of the generals. Remember, we're talking history here. Verse 10. The wicked ruler, Antiochus Epiphanes, son of King Antiochus III of Syria, was a descendant of one of Alexander's generals, Seleucus, the Seleucid Empire. Antiochus Epiphanes had been a hostage in Rome before he became king of Syria in the year 137. He was a hostage in Rome. Remember, he was a Greek, and the Romans had him hostage. Remember, these are all family members, brothers and sisters. They're all one family. The Europeans, they all come from the north. They come from the same stock. They've been murdering, raping, pillaging, and killing each other before they came into the places where melanated people were. Verse 11. At that time there appeared in the land of Yasharal a group of traitorous Yisraelites who had no regard for the law and who had a bad influence on our people. That's playing out right here. They're called pastors and teachers and bishops and our leaders. The law has been dismissed, but the ways of the Gentiles have been embraced. They said, who said? The traitorous Yisraelites, let's come to terms with the Gentiles, for our refusal to associate with them has brought us nothing but trouble. That happened here also. Did you know after 1865, the so-called release from slavery, that we went out and built great cities? Many. Let's just talk about one, Oklahoma City. We were more prosperous than the Europeans. We had our own banks. We had everything. They got jealous. They came from the air and bombed the city. They performed a ground attack, slaughtered many people. And what they did was steal all of our stuff. What did our ancestors say? Let's come to terms with these colonizers, because we have separated ourselves from them and built our own cities. It brought us nothing but trouble. Verse 12. This proposal appealed to many people. Didn't it appeal to many of us? We had marches wanting to be equal with them, wanting to be in their schools. Verse 13. And some of them became so enthusiastic about it that they went to the king and received from him permission to follow Gentile customs. What Gentile customs is that? Verse 14. They built in Jerusalem a stadium like those in the Greek cities. Who's in these stadiums here in America? Basketball. Who are your stars? Football. Who are your stars? Baseball. Who are your stars? We wanted to be just like them. Look at 15. They had surgery performed to hide their circumcision. And abandoned the Holy Covenant. They started associating with the heathen and did all sorts of other evil things. How do you have surgery to hide your circumcision? Circumcision is cutting off the foreskin of the penile, which exposes the head. Now, how do you cover the head back up after the foreskin had already been cut off? We want to be so much like them. We performed this here in this country. All of us are guilty, but the Father has awakened us. We're coming away from this thing. This is why he says, come out from amongst them. Don't associate with them, lest you take on their ways. Antiochus attacks Egypt. Verse 16. When Antiochus had firmly established himself as king, he decided to conquer Egypt and rule that country as well as Syria. Verse 17. He invaded Egypt with a large fleet of ships and a powerful army, including chariots, elephants, and cavalry. Verse 18. When the attack came, King Ptolemy of Egypt turned and fled, and many of his soldiers were killed. Verse 19. Antiochus was able to capture the fortified cities of Egypt and plunder the whole land. When Alexander the Great conquered the known world, he set up his generals before he died. One was Seleucus, which Antiochus comes from, and the next was Ptolemy. They're fighting against each other now. There's truly no honor amongst thieves. When you ask the question, how did Egypt become white? Here's your answer. They came in from generations. This event that you're looking at here is 4 generations later. They were raping. They were marrying and joining with the Egyptian women. They were spreading their seed. This is how the Egypt you know today, the people who are in the forefront, the leadership, they're white. They're descendants from Antiochus, the Seleucid Empire, and the Ptolemaic Empire. Antiochus persecutes the Yisraelites. Verse 20. In the year 143, after the conquest of Egypt, Antiochus marched with a great army against the land of Yasharal and the city of Jerusalem. Verse 21. In his arrogance, how dare you? He entered the temple. Look what he did, brothers and sisters. And took away the gold altar, the lampstand with all its equipment. Remember whose temple this is. Yahudah'S. Verse 22. The table for the bread offered to Yahuwah. The cups and bowls. The gold fire pans. The curtain. This must have been some beautiful curtain. And the crowns. He also stripped all the gold from the front of the temple. Isn't that something? Verse 23. And carried off the silver and gold and everything else of value, including all the treasures that he could find stored there. What do you think the greatest treasure was that was in the temple? It was the scrolls, brothers and sisters, the law. Verse 24. Then he took it all to his own country, that's in Syria. He had also murdered many people and boasted arrogantly about it. Verse 25. There was great mourning everywhere in the land of Yasharal. Here's your indictment for the Europeans. Your ancestors, whether they be Greek, Roman, Spanish, English, French, whatever you call them, they are all indicted for what they have done to us. The whole world is guilty. But the Maccabees is about the Europeans. They had to take this out. They want to make themselves look like their hands are clean. But they came in with great slaughter, with their deviant behavior. They stripped the gold from the front of the temple. They had no respect, no regard for Yahuwah. To the victor goes the spoils. And in verse 25 it says there was great mourning everywhere in the land of Yasharal. This must teach us a lesson. If our mighty one turns his back on us, we will be destroyed. Verse 26. Rulers and leaders groaned in sorrow. Young men and young women grew weak. The beauty of our women faded. Verse 27. Every bridegroom sang a funeral song, and every bride sat mourning in her room. Sounds like slavery here in America, doesn't it? You get married, you jump the broom, the masters sell you off to another slave master. Now your marriage is done. And we sat in mourning. We've been watching this play out, brothers and sisters, now for over 2,000 years. Our master is coming soon. All we need to do is turn back to him. Give him of yourself totally. Verse 28. All our people were clothed with shame. Don't let him return, and you're going to be clothed with shame at that time. And our land trembled for them. Verse 29. 2 years later, Antiochus sent a large army from Mysia against the towns of Judea. When the soldiers entered Jerusalem, verse 30, their commander spoke to the people, offering them terms of peace and completely deceiving them. Then he suddenly launched a fierce attack on the city, dealing it a major blow and killing many of the people. Does that sound familiar? Isn't that how they do it? We come in peace. We want to make a contract with you, a treaty. You sign the document, and while you're thinking everything is all right, they come with great slaughter. They are deceivers, brothers and sisters. Why do you think the people in the Middle East, why do you think that they don't trust the Europeans because they know their history. This is what they've done down through the millennia. They speak, as the Indians would say, they speak with a forked tongue. Verse 31. He plundered the city, set it on fire, and tore down its buildings and walls. Now we see why it's not too much left there, except for the temple. Verse 32. He and his army took the women and children as prisoners and seized the cattle. Okay, brothers and sisters, let's see if you remember your homework when we were dealing with are there different species of humans on this planet. We learned that when Japhet went into Europe, Japhet, the male, disappeared. Only thing was left was the women. And they took our women, raped them. Some of them joined with them and brought forth their seed. Look at what it says here. He and his army took the women and children as prisoners and seized the cattle. What happened to the men? They killed them all, brothers and sisters. Women are considered to be booty, spoils of war. That's why when you have today, when you hear the brother says, yo, man, I'm going to get that booty. And you think he's talking about the woman's butt, which he really is, but the term comes from the spoils of war. Now, we know what they're going to do with the women. What about the children? Remember who these people are. They are sexual deviants. They love little children. They love having sex with them. And they seized the cattle. They seized their wealth. Verse 33. Then Antiochus and his forces built high walls and strong towers in the area north of the temple, turning it into a fort. Verse 34. They brought in a group of traitorous Jews and installed them there. Traitorous Yahudah'S, traitorous Israelites. There was no such thing as Jews. This is some modern description that is describing another people altogether. But we know it is Yasharol or Yasharolites, traitors to the cause. Remember who they are. They said, let us join with these Europeans. It'll be better for us. When they joined with the Europeans, they became against their people and their mighty one. The same way as we have the people who join with them today against us. It's our own people that you have to look out for, brothers and sisters. We already know exactly what the Europeans are going to do. But when you have these traitorous Yasharolites, they are the ones that you have to watch out for. Verse 35. They also brought in arms and supplies and stored in the fort all the loot they had taken in Jerusalem. This fort became a great threat to the city. Verse 36. The fort was a threat to the temple, a constant and evil menace for Yasharol. Verse 37. Innocent people were murdered around the altar. The holy place was defiled by murderers. Do you hear the language that it used to describe the Europeans? Wicked, evil, murderous. Verse 38. The people of Jerusalem fled in fear, and the city became a colony of foreigners. See, they're colonizers. They were practicing this over 2,000 years ago, brothers and sisters. There is nothing new under the sun. Jerusalem was foreign to its own people, just like Egypt is foreign to the true Egyptians. The place that they call the Promised Land or the Middle East is foreign to us today. All you have there is a bunch of colonizers who had been forced to abandon the city. So you see how the city became colonized, because we had to flee. Verse 39. Her temple was as empty as a wilderness. Her festivals were turned into days of mourning. That's our feast days, brothers and sisters. Her Sabbath joy into shame. Her honor became an object of ridicule. Do you see the Sabbath joy? The Sabbath was joyful in the land, brothers and sisters. Do you know why? The Sabbath in the land was like the weekend that we have here in America. The Saturday and Sunday weekend, you work all week, and then when the Saturday and Sunday come, you get off and you're happy and you're rejoicing and you're running around and you're barbecuing and you're having a good time on the weekend. That's how it was in the land. The Sabbath was always something that you look forward to. If you're not looking forward to the Sabbaths every week when they come, it's not a joy to you. Let me tell you something else. The feast days, they were turned into days of mourning. Why? Because if they caught you carrying this stuff out, they would kill you. Verse 40. Her shame was as great as her former glory. Wow. Our greatness was renowned around the world. Everyone knew of the Yahudah'S and their victories and their mighty one. But now their glory has turned to shame, and her pride was turned into deepest mourning. 2,000, almost 300 years, brothers and sisters, we have been in mourning. They have destroyed us. They have destroyed our name. They have destroyed our Mashiach's name. And above all, they have destroyed the name of our mighty one. He is unknown to them. He is just being rediscovered today. We will know his name. He says, my people shall know my name. And do you see this shame that we have? It's going to be turned back into glory. If you come back to Yahuwah, if you return to your power, if you notice everything that they're doing is taking the law away from you, because the law is your power. Verse 41 to 43. This guy is really wicked, isn't he? Antiochus now issued a decree that all nations in his empire should abandon their own customs and become one people. Do you see that? That means your Sabbaths, your feast days, your new moons, everything has to be abandoned. You have to become one people. I wonder what is involved in that. All the Gentiles and even many of the Yahudah'S submitted to this decree. Well, the alternative was death. They adopted the official pagan religion, offered sacrifices to idols, and no longer observed the Sabbath. What pagan religion was that? They were offering pigs unto Zeus. Verse 44. The king also sent messengers with a decree to Jerusalem and all his towns of Judea, ordering the people to follow customs that were foreign to their country. These things have been pushed down your throat here. Do you know what's been pushed down your throat? Jesus. Verse 45. He ordered them not to offer burnt offerings, grain offerings, wine offerings in the temple, and commanded them to treat Sabbaths and festivals as ordinary work days. Well, it didn't have to command you here to treat the Sabbaths and the festivals as ordinary work days because they changed the calendar. They no longer followed the lunations in the sky. So now you've been tricked into treating your Sabbaths and your feast days as ordinary work days. What are you talking about, Brother David? You know the renewed moon comes out mostly during the week. You have it on Monday, you'll have it on Tuesday, you have it on Wednesday, you have it on Thursday, you may have it on Friday. We had one Saturday in the whole year, and then we had maybe about 2 Sundays. So your Sabbaths falls out during the middle of the week. We treat them as what? Ordinary work days. I got to go to work. I tell you the truth, brothers and sisters, get your own businesses so you can make your own schedule. Verse 46. They were even ordered to defile the temple and the holy things in it. Bringing pig in there. Verse 47. They were commanded to build pagan altars, temples, and shrines, and to sacrifice pigs and other unclean animals there. What a mess. 48. They were forbidden to circumcise their sons because they were unclean. They wanted us to be unclean also, and were required to make themselves ritually unclean in every way they could. Verse 49, look why. So that they would forget the law, which Yahuwah had given through Moses, and would disobey all its commands. See the purpose? The purpose is for you to forget the law. Even today, when you speak to most people, they tell you you don't have to keep the law. It's been abolished. It's been abolished through Jesus. Yes, that is correct. It has been abolished through Jesus, who is the sacrificial ham, the pig offering. This is crazy, brothers and sisters. But Yahuwah is teaching them right now that he's in control. Who is being hit the hardest with this coronavirus? The Europeans. They're struggling now. They're trying to keep their economies going. They're trying to stop the spread of this virus. It's amongst them. Did you hear what the people in Africa said? Don't you bring that stuff here. We don't want you bringing that stuff here. They had to cut off all the flights coming in. Verse 50. The penalty for disobeying the king's decree was death. This played out again in 300 and maybe 45 or 40 AD, when Constantinus, the son of Constantine, the so-called great also, he made a decree. He told the people who were in Jerusalem, he told the Jews, he said, you can no longer look up at the moon, you can no longer observe the stars, Now you have to fix your Sabbath on my calendar. Did they do that? Yes, they did. Why? The penalty for disobeying the king's decree was death. So if you're observing that Saturday Sabbath, you're just following one of the king's decree, not our king, not Yahuwah, their kings. Verse 51. The king not only issued the same decree throughout the whole empire, but he also appointed officials to supervise the people and commanded each town in Judea to offer pagan sacrifices. Now do you see why Shaul was saying all of these things about eating foods that were sacrificed unto demons and devils? This is what he was talking about, brothers and sisters. We had been Hellenized already. We had been Romanized already by the time of Paul, Shaul. This is why the Mashiach came. Because the people had forgotten the law. He was putting them back on track. He didn't come to abolish it. He came to proclaim it, brothers and sisters. Verse 52. Many of the Yisraelites were ready to forsake the law and to obey these officials. Of course they were. There was fear. You had towers to spy on you. Every Shabbat you were supposed to go to the temple at its gates and worship. You couldn't do that anymore. They built a tower to spy on the temple. If they saw you there, they'll cut you down. You had these evil, wicked, traitorous Yisraelites. They were watching you. All you had to do was to incite a prayer or do something according to the law. They would report you. Just like here in America, if you were to read a book or learn how to read, you can be hung from a tree. Verse 53. And their conduct forced all true Yisraelites to hide wherever they could. In comes the ones who refused to take on these customs. Instead, they left their comfort. They left their lands. They left their wealth to go hide in the mountains. Verse 54. On the 15th day of the month of Kislev, in the year 145, they're giving you days and months and years. This must be important. What happens when you look up in the sky on the 15th day in the evening? You have a full moon. King Antiochus set up the awful horror on the altar of the temple, and pagan altars were built in the towns throughout Judea. What do you think that awful horror was? It was a pig that they sacrificed in Yahuwah's temple. Did they slap our master in the face? It's because of us transgressing his law. When they set up this pig, it established their sacrifice. Jesus is the sacrificial ham, pig. Yahusha is the sacrificial lamb. Do you see the replacement? They replaced the lamb with the pig. If you go to the Strong's Concordance, you find that in the Greek the name is pronounced Iesu. Over time it morphed into Hey Su. Then it went into Jesus. All three of those terms are still used today for those who are in the academic realm, for those who are the congregation. They know nothing of these things. The suffix sus, do you know what it means? Hog, pig, swine. The prefix je, which equals go, means earth. So you're talking about the earth pig that was sacrificed on Yahuwah's altar. The replacement sacrifice. What did our Mashiach tell us? I've come in my Father's name. You do not receive me, but another's going to come in his own name. Him you will receive. Who did we receive? Jesus, the sacrificial ham. Verse 55. Pagan sacrifices, pigs, were offered in front of houses and in the streets. Verse 56. Any books of the law which were found were torn up and burned. There was a high level of literacy in Yasharal. Everyone had their little book. Verse 57. Anyone who was caught with a copy of the sacred books or who obeyed the law was put to death by the order of the king. Sounds familiar? What happened in slavery days when you picked up a book? What was the death penalty? They would hang you from a tree. Why? They wanted to keep you stupid. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Verse 58. Month after month, these wicked people. Look how the book describes them. Did I make this up? I did not. The book tells you they were wicked. This is why they had to take Maccabees out. Because if you were to go here and really study this like we're doing now, line by line, you would see. These wicked people used their power against the Yisraelites caught in the towns. Verse 59. On the 25th day of the month, these same evil people, look what it's calling them now. First it called them wicked people. We found before they called them murderous people. Now it's telling you evil people offered sacrifices on the pagan altar erected on top of the altar in the temple. This is Yahuwah's temple we're talking about. Look at the date. On the 25th day of the month. Go back to verse 54. On the 15th day of the month of Kislev. So we have the month. Kislev. When you look up Kislev, you're going to find it's from November into December. Why? What are you talking about, Brother David? What do you mean? How's the month November into December? Because they're talking about how the lunations of the moon works. It's the only way to calculate time in those days. The new moon would come out maybe in the end of the month of November, and then would go into the next month, which would be the 12th month, from what we understand here on the Gregorian calendar. So it was the month of December. Look it up yourself. Remember how the moon works. They offered another pig sacrifice on this day. Whose birthday is the 25th of December? Jesus. 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 Who did they offer the sacrifice to? Zeus. So Zeus must be the father of Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Are you with me, people? It's all right here. And we fell into this. Let's look at more wickedness. Verse 60. Mothers who had allowed their babies to be circumcised were put to death in accordance with the king's decree. Why would you kill a mother just for cutting the foreskin off of your baby's penis? Do you know that this was done because all of the male children that came out of the matrix were dedicated to Yahuwah? They didn't want us to be dedicated to Yahuwah. So they said we have to stop this. So what did they do? Verse 61. Their babies were hung around their necks, and their families and those who had circumcised them were put to death. Do you see the drastic measures that were used to keep you from following the law? Now you're able to keep the law without any of these measures, and yet do not. Verse 62. But many people in Yasharal firmly resisted the king's decree and refused to eat food that was ritually unclean. This is what Paul was talking about. Eating things that were sacrificed unto idols. What was sacrificed, brothers and sisters? What the New Testament doesn't tell you. The pig. That we're eating it. Ham, spam, ribs, chitlins, hog maws, pig feet. But look at our brothers and sisters in verse 63. They preferred to die rather than break the holy covenant and eat unclean food, and many did die. They have secured their place in the kingdom under drastic measures. If you make it in, you will meet them. Verse 64. In his anger, whose anger? Yahuwah made Yasharal suffer terribly. Why did he do that? Because we had already fallen into apostasy before they came in. This is why he allowed them. This is why he turned his back on us. The northern kingdom was already taken away for their apostasy. Then here us, Yahudah, we begin to slip into the same apostasies, worshiping Baal, not keeping the law, offering lame beasts, not keeping his judgments, letting wickedness run rampant in the kingdom unchecked. This was the penalty from our Father. These wicked, evil, murderous people. Who is he talking about? The Europeans. They try to make you think that their hands is clean. But when you read the Maccabees and other texts, you find out they were the catalyst for our destruction and still are here today to hold you down, to keep you from the truth. Who removed the book of Maccabees from your Bible? They did, because this history shows who they are. I watched the movie the other day, I forgot the name, but one of the brothers was sitting down with another brother at the table. He had just came from jail, and he said to the other brother, he says, the white man must be the devil. When you look at his history, there's no other conclusion that you can come to. How is it that they are in such denial? Because they're in power. It's justified to them. Brothers and sisters, these same wicked and evil people state that they were entrusted with the book. They stole the scrolls from the temple. Yes. Think about that. They weren't entrusted by Yahuwah. They stole them. They translated them into Greek, their own language. Then the Romans translated it into Latin. Then when Yahusha came, they caught all of the letters and the scrolls, and they have them either in their Vatican or they tore them up and burned them. And they gave you your New Testament. Your New Testament is tainted with their gods and their ways. Let me just tell you one of the ways that you have to look for. Anytime you see anything that is all-inclusive, has nothing to do with this. They came and destroyed the people of the book, and now they say that salvation has been turned over to them because we refused our mighty one. We didn't refuse him. Most of us were forced into it, but there were some who preferred to die rather than break the holy covenant and eat unclean food, and many did die. Many. Yahuwah said he has chosen 7,000 men who did not bow the knee to Baal. We come from those 7,000. All we have to do is return back to Yahuwah, return back to his law. As you see, this whole first chapter of the book of Maccabees tells you something important. Everything they did was to keep you away from the law. Continue to part 2. Shalom.